whether it's because of Devers or the struggles in general, the injuries, there just does not seem to be a huge it, it the team. Something seems off with the team, and yeah, that goes with not being very good. Um, but one thing that it's similar to a thought that I had about the Celtics that I think I've shared before. But a concern I have with the Red Sox is the players who actually know how to play. And I don't mean like know how to pitch and know how to hit, but how to like play the game are not the ones who came through the Red Sox system. And I that's concerning to me. And I'm talking about like knowing where to throw on the relay from the outfield, like knowing not to swing on a steal when your teammate is stealing a base. Like these sorts of like trying to take an extra base when the situation does not call for it whatsoever. Like these are things like playing the sport things. And the only guys on the team that I think are good at it are Wilyer Abreu, who came up through the Astro system, did not come up through the Red Sox system. Alex Bregman, obviously. I even think Trevor Story. I think Trevor Story like knows those situations.
Yeah.
And the other one who when he's in there, I give him credit for knowing how to play his position and knowing how to hit is Rob Refsnyder. And the rest of those like and to me like that's something that yeah, it's on Cora when you're making these little mistakes, because he's the manager. But I also just wonder, it's like, why do we not know how to play the game?
Yeah, I can see that. I do wonder, part of it is I think they are a young team. Um, you can
Yeah,
only run
William
that excuse
Abreu's
for so
pretty young
long.
though.
Yeah, yeah, no, right. And I think, he's legit. I do think so. Some of it might be that they're young, but some of it I just think is maybe a byproduct of how much they jerk these guys around in the minors. You know, you not. I don't think I haven't seen anything that Christian Campbell doesn't know how to play the game. But you look at Christian Campbell; it's a guy who, last year Marcelo Meyer gets hurt and they put him at shortstop instead of having him focus on second base, where he clearly that's his future position. And then they also had him messing around with left and center. Spring training, he played like all four. We've talked about Devers, right? Now they're moving him over to DH. David Hamilton was a shortstop and a third baseman. Now he's playing second. I don't know again if he fits into the category you're saying, but again, it's a guy they jerked around a lot. Duran was a second baseman uh, until he got to Double A, I think. Then they put him in center. He was bad. Put him in left. He was a disaster when he came up defensively and moved him around more. Now he's all right. Rafaela was doing shortstop and center. Then last year he focused almost like most of the time on shortstop because of injuries. Now he's back in center field. Um, Connor Wong moved around a lot in the minors. He's different, right? But I'm just saying this. They mess around with guys developmentally a lot in the minors, and you wonder if that translates to learning too many learning experiences when they're up in the majors. And to bring it kind of full circle, maybe that's why they are reluctant to messing around with Anthony and Meyer with this whole first base thing,
Yeah,
where they're like, we need to have these guys focused developmentally on a position because the learning curves and the inexperience show too often when they get up here.
yeah,
Um, you know, I might be making too much of an excuse for him there because at the end of the day, I do think there's something to what you're saying where, it's been a lot of ugly baseball under Cora the last few years. I do think he's an excellent in-game manager. He's maybe one of the best playoff managers in the game, though we haven't been able to see it in a while. Um, but there's been a lot of sloppy, dumb play since he's been in charge, and at some point, like it has to reflect on him.
yeah, yeah. No, Rafaela is a very good microcosm of what I'm talking about. Also, Wong too. Like Rafaela physically can play anywhere. Like the guy is so amazingly skilled, but he doesn't know how to play center field fully, if that makes any sense. Like he'll make the amazing catch, but like he doesn't have that instinctual thing of like what you got to do next. So it leads to batters, runners taking extra bases. That's the kind of stuff they wouldn't have to take. Wong is another one. Like I think Wong has incredible bat to ball skills for a catcher, but still there'll be situations where it's like whether they're trying to put hit and runs on, or the few times that like it makes sense to bunt, and it just seems like they're not able to fully take advantage of those skills that he has. So
You know,
yeah, I mean it leads to again just like tough situations, and when you're losing the amount of close games that they do, a couple outs a game, a couple bases a game, they really get magnified in the win-loss record.
you know, I don't think anybody's talked about this. Why isn't Connor Wong being considered more for first base? Um, just because I think so. I'm looking at it right now. He played 14 games at first last season. Made two errors. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I have the advanced data on how he was at first and his DRS and everything. But we're talking about a guy who can play catcher, second. He played in the outfield last year too. He's played third once. I gotta imagine he's got the ability to play first. And with Carlos Narvaez again, like sort of emerging, I think as a legitimate catching option. Like to maybe he deserves to play more than Connor Wong behind the plate because he's that good defensively. Um, maybe having Connor Wong move over there and platoon with Romy Gonzalez. I know again it's two righties, so it's not great. But I just from a defensive standpoint, I don't know why no one's brought that up. Maybe there's an obvious reason that I'm not thinking of, but like I would consider it.
Yeah, although a lot of Wong's value originates from the fact that he is a catcher.
Right.
So
But he's a
his
good hitter too.
yeah, I
He's a
mean, I
good
just
hitter.
think his offensive impact as a first baseman would not be quite as pronounced as it is when he's catching.
Right.
I also have no time for the narrative that he's like a terrible defensive catcher. It seems, I think to go back to what I was saying before about you're not a serious person. When people are like, oh, he stinks. Like he does not stink. He's a absolutely average major league catcher who happens to have an above average catcher bat. And so I think that an even or split time with Narvaez is definitely warranted. But then it is tough because then when you got a catcher who's not catching that day, you kind of want that catcher to like be resting rather than playing a position where they're in on every single play, every single ball that gets put in play.
This is a bit of a tangent, but I do one thing that I experienced the ABS system for the first time in person last week. I went to Worcester, and have you been to a game yet and seen it in action?
Mm.
It's awesome. Like it has to like be instituted mid-season in the majors. It's so fast. Like the call. The umpire makes the call, and like right away he turns around and says the catcher is challenging, and you look up at the screen, and it's like the tennis thing where it just shows you, or like how we all look the square behind the plate like on MLB.com, and then right there, then the turns and says call is confirmed or not. It takes like 5 seconds. And so I say all that to say that someone like Connor Wong, who I think is considered below average from a framing standpoint, and that's like a big metric for teams is how they're framing. I wonder how ABS eventually will impact that. Like, do you care as much about a catcher's framing skills when we are heading towards an automatic balls and strike system? Would Connor Wong then have better value, or would the onus on having a catcher be good defensively not be as high, and you would want them to be a better hitter? Like, would that threshold for offensive catching raise? Like, I just wonder how that's going to sort of manifest over the next 3 or 4 years. But in the near term, yeah, obviously he's not like a perfect offensive fit for first base, but I could talk myself into him making more sense than Trevor Story again if the Devers thing is off the table, which who knows.
Yeah. Okay.
I will
Listen.
just say one on the
Yeah.
Malays thing about the Red
Mhm.
Sox real quick. I was looking at it, and oh, where'd I go? So, and again, they should not be below 500 right now. They're underachieving for sure, but I it is early and these things can change. And so I mean, I was just looking at it, and last year on June 11th, the Red Sox were 33 and 34. Which was not good. And then less than a month later, they were 10 games over 500, and we were all talking about like, wow, it's a good, like it's easy to forget that now because the vibe down the stretch wasn't great and
Didn't
they
they
fell
have three
apart.
All-Stars last year?
Yeah, Duran, Houck,
Duran
and
and Jansen.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they were a good team. Like they were right near for they were in a playoff spot there before the trade deadline. Then they fell apart. But remember how good people were feeling about the team in July heading up to that. Like they were a really good feel good story in town. You're like, wow, like they're ahead of schedule. This is great. When as recently as June 11th, they were under 500. So these things can change in a hurry. I think they're too talented to not eventually go on a hot streak. Like they haven't had a hot streak yet. I think they won 5 in a row, but it was like a weird 5 in a row. It was sandwiched between two like 4 game losing streaks. Um, but I think they're too good to not at some point here rattle off like 9 out of 10, and then we'll forget about this. But you know, it's got to happen sooner rather than later. I think it's within the next month they have to sort of really show that ability that we're talking about.